as Sam was sharing earlier, we, everyone here that belongs to this community, we are a family. We're not perfect, but we try to thrive towards perfection. And one of the ways we do that is through learning from the life of Jesus, because we believe, and at least I believe, and I'm sure others can also test, but from my experience, I wouldn't be the same if it were not for my relationship with Jesus. And so, if I find something, I don't want to keep it to myself. I want to share with everybody. And that's what we try to do through this community. We want to learn, what did Jesus say? And is there any truth to what he said? Because if life is changed, is transformed through him, is that real? Or was he just a fake? Right? And it's for each of you to explore. But I can assure you that there is life transformation. When one of the greatest sermons Jesus preached is called the Sermon on the Mount. Some of you have heard. One time he was performing a lot of miracles. People with paralysis, or people that were demon possessed, people that were going through extreme pain. He healed all of them. He healed all of them who reached out to him. And when he saw that, he said, hey, there is much more than physical healing. Because physical healing can only take you so far. But the healing of the heart is much more important than the physical healing. So that's where he went to a mountainside. As you see this picture, he started teaching them. And I was thinking, when I see this crowd, what kind of people might be there, right? What was some group of people that assembled? Because he wanted to share something. And so I contextualized it to today's being. And I wrote a few things. I said, okay, here may be a category of people, the elderly couple that they may be asking the question, we just recently went through this pandemic. The question that may be going on in today's context is, will there be another pandemic? We've seen what pandemic has done. It ruffled our lives. It taught us that we are fragile, and it reminded us that we cannot take anything for granted. And then there is another group of people with their little daughter there. They may be asking a question that some of us here who have kids here will ask, how will my children turn out to be? Especially in an age where we are surrounded with technology, with gadgets, and there is so many things going on. Where will my kid be? When they grow up to be a teenager or beyond that, how will they turn out? That's a question in parents' minds today. That's the second group of people. The third group of people may be asking the question. That gentleman there is like, hey, I lost my job. I just joined and they fired me. I'm talking about today's context. And that guy may be asking, hey, I lost a job. Is there hope? Can I find another job? Or will I be like this? And if you have to extend that to our, like today, to our time today, especially people from India, I have my H1, I'm in the lottery, will I get picked? If I don't, then what do I do next, right? So there's another group of people that are asking the question. Number 4, the skeptic. I was telling earlier, can Jesus' teaching really change my life? Or is it just a myth? Right? So there are skeptics in that group. And there is a next group of people, that are asking, that individual is sitting there asking that question, will my marriage last? We live in a day and time when marriages are collapsing. And I'm talking about 50%, like in some areas, it's more than that. Families with the very fabric of marriage is collapsing. And the question that the person is asking, hey, will my marriage last? Right? And then the last group of people, I hurt somebody, I should not have said what I did. Will they accept me? Right? This is just my view of just seeing that picture and calling out this category of people. I'm sure there are much more than you all can. But the Sermon on the Mount, one of the greatest sermons ever preached. If you click the next one, it says, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount addresses all of the above and more. I don't have time to put everything in that, but there is much more than just those 6 categories. So then, I ask the question, what did Jesus say? And so I picked one of his sayings today that says, Jesus said to all those people who gathered there, you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. And John Piper, one of the guys, he said this quote, I will read. It says, people don't enjoy salt. They enjoy what is salted. We are the salt of the earth. We do not exist for ourselves. Simply put, if I give you a spoon of salt and ask you to just taste it, you will quickly throw it. Because you know that salt by itself is sometimes, doesn't go well on our tongue. But that same salt, when mixed with a curry or with a dish, brings the flavor out. And so that's what I want to focus today on. Jesus is saying, you are the salt of the earth. This is Jesus telling his disciples, his followers, those who are following him, you are the salt of the earth. And I'm thinking, Jesus, what did you mean? Salt of the earth. And I don't know how many of you know this. I had to do some study on how this word salt came about. What is the history of salt? And here is something that I gathered. Salt, in olden days, people used salt as wages. Believe it or not, they used to give literally salt as a means for people, for their wages. Part of their wages came as a salt because salt was premium. Think of it like a gold of that time. And in some parts, the salt, in fact, the word salary, this is something that I learned. The word salary is originated from this Latin word called salarium, which means salt. So salt was very important. Not only was it premium, but empires, kingdoms fought over salt. Venice fought with its neighbors to get control of salt, because there were some regions close to Venice in Italy where it was salt premium. And so they fought wars so that they could get control of salt. And something that is very close to us from India. Did you know Indian independence, when Gandhi started the Satyagraha, his fight against the British? He fought again, he had a march, we also hear that as Dandi March or Satyagraha or Salt Satyagraha, because British imposed high levy or tax on salt manufacturers. And so he, in protest of that, initiated what is known as the Salt Satyagraha. So not only were empires fighting over salt, not only salt was a premium in those days, but even there were battles over salt. So what is so special about salt? So I asked, as a, asking myself that question, why did Jesus tell his followers to be the salt of the earth? Nobody likes to be called something of the earth, because we are people who always want to be high up there. To be called salt of the earth, what is Jesus trying to imply? I want you all to watch this next video, and then I will share a few things. Victor, if you can roll the video. Pay close attention, because I'll probably ask you some questions. So let's watch this video.
Sodium, symbol Na, 11 protons and 11 electrons, arranged in shells as 2, 8, and 1. Sodium is an alkaline metal. Like all the elements in this group, it's desperate to get rid of that extra electron.
Well, cut it quickly. I should see some silvery surface inside. Indeed, wow!
It slices like cheese, but it's actually a soft metal. Teo's offered to put on one of his favorite sodium demonstrations. What happens when the pure element dumps its outer electron in a violent altercation with ordinary water? He insists we wait until nightfall, when the reaction will be most spectacular. Kids, do not try this at home.
The whole purpose of this contraption is just to dump it into the bucket of water.
This is a sodium dumping machine.
All right, let's give this a try. Here we go. Nice. Oh! What we're seeing is what happens when sodium's extra electron tears apart water molecules, releasing flammable hydrogen gas, the H in H2O, which explodes when it mixes with air. The next day, Teo takes it up a notch, as if sodium plus water weren't violent enough. Now he wants to combine the same deadly sodium with another lethal element, chlorine, one of the halogens. The result, he claims, will be a tasty flavoring for a net full of popcorn?
Isn't chlorine deadly poison?
Absolutely. I mean, chlorine, they used it as a poison gas in World War I.
To be perfectly safe when these two deadly ingredients combine.
I didn't say that. I said that after they're combined, the result is perfectly safe. The actual process of combining them is fraught with difficulties.
Okay, and that's why we're dressed up like miners here.
First, a hunk of sodium in a dry metal bowl. Then, a jet of pure chlorine. Surprisingly, no explosion. Somehow, when these two bad boys of the periodic table come together, they calm down. At the atomic level, sodium, an alkali metal, had an electron it didn't want, and chlorine, a halogen, wants desperately to grab an electron. Once the handoff was complete, both atoms wound up with full shells, making them stable, and able to join together to form a crystal compound we can't live without. Sodium chloride, table salt.
Now, I don't exactly see, like, a pile of salt anywhere.
Now, the salt, most of it went up in the smoke. It went in the popcorn.
Tastes like salt. The good stuff. Fresh.
Fresh
Fresh
salt.
freshest salt. Taylor's farm.
Teo's backyard reactions have given me a crucial insight. How elements come together to form compounds is all about electrons.
That brings me to when Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." You saw that, right? Sodium, by itself, is a very toxic element. Chlorine, one of the gases, halogen, group of halogen, is also toxic by itself. But when they come together, they form a wonderful compound called what we call salt today. So we have all the chemistry. How many of you have done chemistry in your high school? There should not be any hand. We all have done. We may not remember, that's different. But we all have done chemistry, right? So who can tell me the atomic number of sodium? What's this? 11. Still fresh from school. How about chlorine? What's that? 70. Yeah, 70, right? 70. Now, there was an illustration, right? I mean, you all know the valence orbit, right? So how many valence electrons does sodium have in its outermost orbit? Just one. How many does chlorine have in its outermost orbit?
7.
What do you say?
Yeah.
Shipra, 7.
Yeah, in chlorine.
Chlorine, right? So this sodium, in order to become stable, because you have to be complete in that orbit, right? Otherwise you're unstable. Sodium is unstable because of that one electron in its outermost valence band. It has to, in order to become stable, it has to give up that one electron. Chlorine is desperate to get that one electron in order for it to be stable, because 8, 2, 8, 8, it has 7, so it needs that one electron to be stable. And when these two friends come together, extremely violent, extremely volatile, but when they come together, they form salt. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." So what did he mean? How can these, Jesus, did not say something out of the ordinary. There is some principle that we all can learn. I learned, and I want to share with you. See, sodium had to give up an electron for it to be stable. In order for you to be the salt of the earth, you have to give up something. That's the principle number one. When Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth," he is implying to all of us and to me and to everybody, is you have to give up something in order to be stable. So I said, what is that one thing that may be pointing to all of us? What is that one thing Jesus said? So this is what I thought I'd share. You have to give up your self, in double quotes. I deliberately put that you have to give up yourself. All of us, we all know the self is ruling us, right? Because anytime, there is something that, you want to have it. Because the self is always desiring that one thing. Because selfish is part of our fabric. And Jesus is saying, in order for you to be the salt of the earth, you have to give up yourself. What is giving up yourself? If I have to bring it down, you have to overcome your pride, your ego, your selfishness. You can do that only when you can give up yourself. I had 2 examples I thought, I'm sure there are many, but here is one. It's so true at work, right? When we all are, some of you here are working, some of you have different, retired now but worked at some point. Whenever we have a discussion, if somebody doesn't agree with my opinion, the self springs up. The ugly head of self comes up. And you can bring it down to any facet of your life, right? The self is always there because it's selfish. It's always what is in it for me, to me. It's me, mine, or myself. That's the culture we live in today. That everything that you're saying, I want to get something. So Jesus, when he said, I want you all to be the salt of the earth, he's saying, hey, if you want to be the salt of the earth, you have to give up yourself. And that is true even in marriage, right? Even in marriage, when there is a disagreement between husband and wife, immediately the self will come through. Because, it's sometimes we think like, hey, I'm the breadwinner of the house, so I should have the dominance. Sometimes if husband and wife don't agree with each other, the self comes into picture. And Jesus said, if you want your marriage to succeed, give up yourself. Yourself, as in double quotes. I was thinking, Jesus, it's good you're saying all these things, but have you lived like that? I want to tell you something. Jesus, what I learned, he never taught something that he did not practice. He never taught something. He was such a good teacher. Good teachers are ones who teach what they practice. And Jesus did. Imagine God becoming man. God the incarnate. God, Jesus who is God, became man, giving up his self so that we can be blessed. So when he told his disciples to be the salt, he was telling, look, I'm not just telling you, I actually gave myself to come down to earth for you. Because I loved you so much that I want to come down to save you. And that's what I wanted to give the first principle. In order to be the salt, you have to give up something. And in this case, I'm saying give up yourself. Just like the sodium. Sodium had to give up that one electron for it to be active. So you have to give up that. So if you want to be the salt of the earth, give up yourself. And you will see how it will enrich your life. Principle number 2. In order to become the salt of the earth, what did chlorine do? Chlorine gave up or took? What's that, Robin?
Took one.
Accepted, right? It needed one. It had 7, it was looking for one. Chlorine accepted 1 electron. In order for you to be the salt of the earth, learn to accept others as yourself. That's the principle number 2. If you want to, when Jesus said you are the salt of the earth, he's telling all of us, look, accept others as yourself. Not easy. Accepting others as yourself. So, in other words, accept others for who they are and not what they are. There's a difference between those two phrases. Accept others for who they are and not for what they are. See, we live in a world, we like to accept people for what they are. If somebody is nice to me, I accept him as my friend. If somebody is not nice to me, he's outside of my inner circle. See, we accept, we prejudice ourselves and accept people that are good to us. And the principle I want to draw to all of us is, to be the salt of the earth, we have to accept others for who they are, not what they are. What I mean by that, see, everybody in this room is unique, precious and wonderfully made in the eyes of God. See, when we have a discussion sometimes, and I have done this by the way, I think, if I didn't agree with somebody or somebody doesn't know some basic fundamentals, I would immediately cross him out of my thing. Oh, he doesn't know anything. See, what he is not good in something, maybe for me, I may not be good in that other thing that he is good at. Right? Because we evaluate based on my lenses. Maybe he's not good in that area, but maybe he's good in some other area that I'm not good at. So learn to accept for who they are. Because when I see the life of Jesus, how he treated everybody, whether it was an adulterous woman or whether it was his disciple, whether it was an outcast Samaritan woman or if it was, a person who denied him, there was no difference in the way he loved them. Because he loved them for who they are, not what they are. Didn't matter whether they were adulterers, didn't matter whether they were a murderer, didn't matter for him. For him, who they are was more important. So my second principle to all of us today is accept people for who they are. And that's what it means to be the salt of the earth. Salt of the earth, 2 principles. 1, learn to give up something. In this case, give up the self. And then second principle, in order to become the salt of the earth, accept others as yourself. Jesus told his disciples something that was very eye-opening. He said, hey, you all tell that you love me, but you don't live like you love me. See, you tell you love me, but when you live your life, you don't live like that. In other words, he said, if you don't love your neighbor, how can you love me? You cannot love me and deny or not help or accept your neighbor. So learn. If you want to be the salt of the earth, learn to give up yourself. If you want to be the salt of the earth, learn to accept others as yourself. Treat others as you would like yourself to be treated. That's what in essence he was telling. So my punchline is becoming salt involves giving up yourself and accepting others for who they are. That's what I wanted to get the point across to all of you. That's what Jesus was telling to his followers. You are the salt of the earth. 4 blessings of a salt-filled life. I want to share and we'll close. 4 blessings of a salt-filled life. Did you know, brother, if you can bring up that. Did you know the 4 blessings or the 3 blessings of a salt-filled life? Salt is used as a preservative. Back in the days when we didn't have refrigerators, how did people store things? They actually put salt, because salt was a preservative that was preserving from meat or other things from decaying. That was a function of salt. Long before we had this age of refrigerator where we store things, salt was used as a preservative. So what I wanted to share is having a salt-like attitude will preserve your relationships. Having a salt-like attitude will preserve your relationship for long. Just like salt is used as a preservative to get the food from decaying, so also when you have that salt-filled life, you will preserve your relationship. Whether it's your marriage, whether it's your relational, with your friends or relatives, it will last when you have that salt-filled attitude. Because salt is a preservative by nature. Second principle, it's used as a means to melt snow. Sometimes we see on the highways on a very freezing day, when there's a lot of snow on the road, they actually pour the salt to melt the snow so that the roads can be cleared. In other words, salt is actually used as a means to melt the hard ice or the snow so that the roads are clear. Principle I wanted to draw to all of you. Having a salt-like attitude melts the most stubborn, adamant, and people that you feel like you cannot change them. Have the salt-like attitude, and you will see that even a hard-hearted, headstrong people can be transformed. And that's what, those 2 principles I was telling earlier. If you want to see a hard-hearted person melt, give up yourself, accept others. That's what Jesus was telling his disciples. Hey, if you want to have a rich, enriched life, be the salt of the earth, because that will change your life forever. Not only is salt used as a preservative, not only is used to melt snow, but salt is, what is salt used for?
Taste.
What's that?
Taste.
Taste! I mean, if I give you a bowl of soup with no salt, you'll take 1 spoon and spit it up. Because without salt, there is no flavor. Salt adds flavor or taste. What do I mean by that? Having a salt-filled attitude would enrich your life and the lives of people around you. Having a salt-filled life will enrich your life and the life of people around you. I just gave 3 examples. The 4th one you all know. Somebody says, hey, don't put salt on the wound, right? Because salt is actually medicinal also. Did you know that? People use salt as a medicine to cover the wound because it had a function to take away absorb the water so that the wound can get healed soon. But when you put it initially, it pinches, right? The 4th principle that is not recorded here that I just want to share with you is the wound. When the salt is put on the wound, it's never easy, it's never convenient, it's never comfortable. But when it does its job, it will heal the wound. Same thing how what Jesus was telling his disciples, look, there will be times where you will be tested, there will be times where you will go through struggles. But let me tell you, when you see and go through that, you will be someone that you were never wanted you. You would be someone that you never thought you would be. Case in point, God disciplined. Jesus was telling his disciples, in this world, you will have trouble. See, following Jesus doesn't mean you won't have many issues. That's a lie. But here is the truth. Following Jesus, you will have problems, but He will be with you and carry you through that problem. And that's that salt on the wound. You might feel like it's painful, but when you go through that journey, you will see that that was worth it. That's what I experienced in my life. When I gave a chance to Jesus to change me, initially I was a skeptic too. I was cynical. But the more I followed Him, the more I understood Him, the more my life changed as a result of that. So a salt-like attitude, and that's what I'm going to close with. A salt-like attitude involves giving up yourself and accepting others for who they are, much like the sodium chloride compound. One had to give up, one had to accept, and with those two, they became stronger. So my question to you this evening, what Jesus told to His disciples, and I'm going to tell all of you, do you want to be the salt of the earth? The answer is yes. Let me encourage you those two things. Learn to give up yourself. Self in the double quotes. And second, learn to accept others as yourself. Or treat others as you would like to be treated. And I can assure you, without any doubt, that your life will change dramatically. Your life will transform dramatically. And you look back and you will be glad that you tried those principles. I did, and it changed my perspective. Not just in my life, in every facet of my life. Whether it is in my workplace, whether it is in my home, or whether it is with my people outside of work. Learn to accept others as yourself and give up yourself. It has flourished in my married life. It has helped me with my raising of my children. It has helped me with my friends at work and elsewhere. Those two principles. So now it made sense to me when Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." I could connect the spiritual truth. That if I could live those two principles, Jesus was telling His disciples, look, if you want to be the salt of this earth, here are the two things you can do. And my challenge to you as you walk out of this room is, give it a try. See next time, when pride comes to sit on the throne of your decision making, give selfless a chance and see if it's worth it. And evaluate yourself whether when Jesus said what He said, whether there was any significance or it was just a myth. So on that note, I want to challenge all of you, right, with what He said. This is a simple truth. Jesus just said, "You are the salt of the earth." But it's so profound when you look at deep down what He was trying to say. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank You for this evening. Thank You, Lord, for bringing us all together. Lord Jesus, You are amazing. Lord, lives are changed as a result of what You said. 2000 years ago this was written, but even today it's as applicable and as relevant as it was originally written. Lord, everyone in this room has a struggle of their own that nobody knows except You. And so God, won't You help us?